Hi, everybody. It's Wisdom Wednesdays. I'm Ariana Newcomer, Dove Oracle Priestess, and I'm so grateful to everyone who participated in the Claim Your Wisdom Challenge. Last week, we had a wonderful time. It was deep and profound. The women were so supportive of each other. And I gave away a daily prize of a 30-minute private mentoring session with me. And so I got to really dive in deep with some of the women on some of the issues that they were particularly dealing with. So it was really, really a wonderful, wonderful experience. So thank you to all who participated. And the videos are all still available here on Healing the Soul's Voice page if you want to do the challenge for yourself. The women really did find it was extraordinary. And there is a Q&A call that we did with women from the current and former Wise Women Immersion Program groups. That's also going to be available here on the page, and it's already up in the Activate Your Inner Wise Women group. So for those of you who are interested in the Wise Women Immersion, which is currently enrolling for its third cohort, I highly recommend that you watch that session. So today's topic is about staying open to what we don't know. I grew up reading the New York Times, especially the Sunday New York Times, and I still get the physical Sunday paper delivered to me here in California. And there was this really interesting article. I love the serendipity of having the print paper because I can just go through and happen upon things that are extraordinary that I wouldn't necessarily think to read if I just saw the headline online. So this was an article about a researcher named Carl Wiese, I think that's how it's pronounced, W-O-E-S-E, who discovered or uncovered what is called horizontal gene transfer. And I just found this fascinating. We tend to think of evolution as a tree, like this one behind me, and it's usually depicted that way. And there is a certain branch that that represents a certain species, and the evolution of that species only goes vertically along this branch, and it can branch out, but it can't go across to another species. And what Carl Wiese discovered, and researchers who worked with him and associated with him discovered, is there's actually, instead of just vertical gene transfer in this way of branching a tree, there's actually horizontal gene transfer, meaning that genes can transfer from one species to another. And this was just fascinating to me. It's another example of how much we don't know. And that when we get into our scientific method and we use the structures that have already been created and we just work within those, sometimes we miss things that are really, really important to help us understand how life really works. And so a friend of mine is an elder up in Canada, and she works with some First Nations women up there, and she sent me pictures recently of a ceremony where they were giving salmon, dried salmon, as gifts in the ceremony. And salmon, of course, had been really crucial to the lives of the First Nations in the Pacific Northwest, and so they treated the salmon as sacred, as part of their the importance of the web of life. And she told me they've actually found the DNA of salmon in the tops of some of the evergreen trees up there in Canada. That would be an example of horizontal gene transfer. And it's so interesting because sometimes these genes that were transferred from one species to another, sometimes they come in and they become non-functional because the organism that took them in can't. They have been changed to actually serve a function in the organism. And one thing that I found totally fascinating is that part of the in the uterus, when a human woman is pregnant, part of the protections in the placenta come from another species that we have altered to serve a function for us in our bodies. So there are many and many and many of these things. And the theme, for those of you who have been receiving and following my full moon channelings each month that I send out to my email list, the theme that my guides have been talking about all year is expanding our perceptions. So this is another invitation to us to expand our perceptions and to never assume that we know everything, and to realize that there's so much more that we don't know in our current scientific structures and in the teachings that we have received in school, and even the experiments that are being done now, because often those are being done within certain parameters, because the researchers believe that this is the way something functions. So Carl Wiese had this open mind, and he began to look, and he found things that if he had held to this image of the tree of life, and that gene transfer and evolution is only ever vertical, he would never have discovered the horizontal gene transfer. So there's just so much more to life than we realize. And we do this in the Wise Women Immersion. We are constantly opening our perceptions to receive more information from the subtle realms, from our own inner wisdom, and from our energetic systems, and from our own bodies. We've been trained out of paying attention to our body wisdom, but our bodies actually can react to something before the brain. So if there's a threat, we can be running before the brain ever recognizes or has time to acknowledge and then send the signal. So let's continue to keep our minds open, keep opening our perceptions, keep allowing ourselves to understand that we don't know what we don't know, and that there are many, many mysterious and delightful and fascinating things for us still to learn and discover and uncover. Some of that is how trees actually communicate. And I can't remember if I've done a Wisdom Wednesdays on this, but trees communicate extensively with each other and with other plants, and actually with us if we decide to come into communication with them. But through their root systems, they connect with the mycelial networks, the fungal networks underground, and they pass information and nutrients to each other, actually. And sometimes they'll do this across species. And sometimes the big trees will help nurture the little ones. And if a tree is dying, it may, when it knows it's going, it will transfer its knowledge and information through the roots to the trees around it. So keep our minds open. Just consider, what else do I not know that would be really fascinating, interesting, and enlivening for me to discover? So there's much and much and much for us to discover, including within our own selves. So again, I invite you, if you're considering the Wise Women Immersion, to watch the Claim Your Wisdom Q&A call. And I look forward to talking with you at some point about the Wise Women Immersion or private mentoring with me. See you next week.